And now, WTOE Radio Live, brought to you by ThroughOurEyes.org.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing today?
Doing great. I'm looking on the positive. It's the right side. How you doing, Janie?
I'm fabulous. I like laughter. I'm on the light side.
Hey, you know what that means?
I think that means we're always looking on the bright side of life.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life.
I'm so excited. The show's about to begin.
So am I, with my straw hat and cane.
I got my tap shoes on. We're ready to go.
Come on, everybody. It's time for the show.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Welcome to another edition of On the Bright Side with Janie and Jerry. I'm Jerry, and you're...
Janie. How are you tonight, Jerry?
I'm doing very well, filled with anticipation about the show we're having tonight. We have not one, but two very special guests, which we will talk about and talk to, and then after we're done, we'll talk about them again. Well, they'll be coming up in the next segment. But Janie, I wanted to ask you a question. How are things going up in New Jersey?
It's wonderful here. It's the spring fever, even though it's going to go down to 40 in the next couple of days. But I have an upcoming trip next week for about 10 days. Larry and I are going on our annual trip to Las Vegas and Beverly Hills and San Diego to see my daughter Rachel and my son-in-law Alan. So looking forward to that.
Well, that should be fun. I was in Beverly Hills. We went to a convention in Anaheim a few years back, and I walked on, Rodeo Drive, with the silver color, painted hydrants and all the stores you needed an appointment to come in. It was really nice. We really enjoyed it. We went to the Hollywood Park. Griffith Park, and saw the Hollywood sign, or saw most of the sign. There was some smog. It was some of the smog was covering, but we had a great time. So that's good. When you go to Las Vegas, do you usually just throw the money on the floor and leave the casino, or do you actually play? Because
I only play the slots, and I like to play the slots that have indicative sounds. So when it goes ding, 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 beep, I have to know what it is so I can yell. My goal is to yell that I won something before my husband can say, "You got the jackpot." So it's like a little game. But in any event, we have a great time, and my brother-in-law is going to fly up and meet us there, and we should really enjoy ourselves. The temperature there for the 10 days that we're going to be there is between, I think they said 72 and 83.
I can handle that. I can handle that. And down here the weather is a little bit warmer during the day, but at night it gets to the 30s. It was supposed to be 27 this morning, like early in the morning before the sun started to rise, and my son gets up about 8 o'clock, so it was pretty good. You didn't get that, did you?
Yeah.
But anyway, so do you have an inspirational quote for us tonight?
I do, and the inspirational quote comes from a book that I read called Making It Work, and then there's a subtitle to it, Educating the Blind and Visually Impaired Student, and it was written by Castellano, who happens to be our next guest, and it's this: we have to stop thinking limits and start thinking possibilities. And in the book, Jerry, if you remember that part, there's a chart with cannots, can'ts, and can-dos.
I remember that.
Really excellent. Oh, my goodness. So in honor of Carol, the author, and everything, I decided to take that quote from her book, Making It Work. So it's really a fabulous book. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we do things to make it work, right, Jerry? We keep ourselves motivated and keep moving forward and making it happen.
Well, Janie, the opposite is so true. It's very easy not to make it work. All you have to do is just sit there like a bump, or Clouseau would say a bump on a log, and it won't work. But the moment you start going out, you get the possibilities. You don't understand what the possibilities are, or as I like to say, possibilities. You don't know what the possibilities are until you start researching it. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a 2-minute break. So we don't want you to go away. We're going to come back with our very, very special guests, Carol and Serena. And so all you listening and or watching, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
The East Valley chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Arizona holds its monthly meeting the third Saturday of each month at 1025 North Country Club in Mesa. For more information, contact Mark Felice at 480-890-8943. Email FELIZFAMILY5@msn.com.
How would you feel if your children went to school and weren't taught to read? What would the future hold for them? Today, a mere 10% of blind children are taught to read Braille. Literacy is a basic right, and with it, a blind person can become just about anything. With Braille, a blind person can read at the same rate as a sighted person. This opens doors to unlimited potential. Learning to read Braille is the key to success. Without it, a blind child doesn't have a chance. For more information on Braille literacy and blindness, please visit our website at www.nfb.org or contact me, Mark Maurer, President, National Federation of the Blind, 1800 Johnson Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21230, or call us at 410-659-9314. The National Federation of the Blind. We are the voice of the nation's blind.
I can listen.
I can cook.
Good. I can coach.
Kids with something to do are less likely to do drugs.
I can drive.
I can paint.
I can dance.
A little of your time can make a lifetime of difference.
I can read.
I can help.
You can help. Call toll-free 1-877-KIDS-313 to find out about community drug prevention programs.
I can keep a kid off drugs.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Welcome back to On the Bright Side with Janie and Jerry. Well, tonight, Janie, we have a very, very special pair. Should I say? Well, I guess I did. Pair of guests tonight that at great expense, and we have flown them to our studios, so to speak, and we're going to have a very interesting discussion this night, and I would like to introduce. Well, Janie, would you like to introduce Carol, or you want?
I'll do it if you want me to.
Oh, go right ahead, because I like hearing your voice, and my voice hurts a little.
Oh, Jerry's suffering from a little sore throat, so when he passes it off to me, he's either drinking something or getting something to eat. But in any event, Carol, I've known Carol for many years. I've heard about Carol long before I met her. My brother Joe told me she was the word he used was a trailblazer, but he meant you with a map can maybe get somewhere. But once I met Carol, I understood what the real word trailblazer meant. And I would say on the continuum of blind advocacy, there's a spot for Carol Castellano. She has really dedicated herself in her life to not only helping her daughter, but helping children, helping blind people gain the respect that they deserve because they are valuable people, and just because they're blind doesn't mean they can't achieve. And I just respect her immensely. Carol, are you there?
I'm here, Janie. Thanks for that beautiful intro.
You're welcome.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Jerry. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just had a little like that, but we're doing fine. So glad that you accepted our invitation to be our guest. Isn't that right, Janie?
With you.
Yes, and Carol, we know who you are, and many people in the NFB know who you are, but we have listeners that listen for the first time and may not know anything about Carol. So we didn't tell you this, but I like to ask, if I opened the dictionary and looked up Carol Castellano, what words might describe who you are so people would get a sense of our Carol Castellano?
Well, I think the word activist and advocate and teacher would probably be in there. I got started in this biz because my daughter was born as a preemie and became blind pretty much at birth. And so ever since then, and boy, I don't even want to say how many years ago that was, I've been involved and really trying to make a contribution.
Terrific.
So, Carol, could you tell us what was the onset with Serena? Now you mentioned that she was a premature. What was the general how would you say prognosis? What did the professionals tell you what would happen with Serena? Could you go over, because I think that's fascinating for what they said and the outcome, because it doesn't match.
When she was young, she had a lot of delays. She was born weighing only 1 pound, 5 ounces, and she was 4 months early. At the time, she was the smallest baby that had ever survived at Morristown Hospital. So the outlook was not good. The outlook for her survival, she had, 6 or 7 surgeries all before she was a year old, and her first surgery, she wasn't even 2 pounds. So she had a lot of insults to her little tiny body. When she came home from the hospital, she was blind. Her arms were just kind of hanging behind her because they had been pinned down to the hospital bed because of intravenous lines. There were just myriad problems. So we were told to have pretty low expectations. We were told she was retarded. We were told she was deaf. She couldn't go to regular school. It just went on and on. I don't know if Serena may be the only child who was rejected from special education preschool.
But you would say that that the general, the view for her future that they said was dim. However, but you took a different point of view, and could you tell us, what did you do when you? I mean, the picture you just painted put a pain in my heart. How about you, Janie? When you
terrible, like dark, gloomy clouds. Yes.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there? How did you get yourself out of that situation, and what did you do from there to help Serena become
honestly,
who she is?
What I saw myself at home didn't match what they were saying to me. So Serena was 3, and she still couldn't talk, but I could see that she could understand everything. And in fact, I could speak to her in English or Italian, and she could understand and follow directions in both languages. So I guess I never really believed them, and in fact, the fact that they said those things to me, I think, is what really started me becoming an activist. I had to defend my own child and prove to these various professionals that she had a brain in there that was functioning. So a lot of what was happening in the first 3 or 4 years was my trying to show the teachers and the doctors what she could do. It was pretty obvious to me, though, at home, when we were playing, talking.
So Carol, when after she was 3 years old and you saw what was going on, did you do research? Did you look for people in similar situations? Did you how did you find the help or the encouragement to go on? Because I would have to admit, a lot of people would look at what you and agree with just let her sit and let her stand in her crib and suck her thumb or whatever. And did you what were your actions at that point?
A couple of things happened that really counted. One was one of the doctors we saw for her eye surgery at Duke Medical Center in North Carolina said to us, search for the best therapist and don't stop for someone who accepts mediocrity. So that was something that he just said it to me as a word of advice, really struck a chord. Another thing was I found out about a speech therapist from a newspaper article. She was down in Florida doing research on premature babies. I wrote to her, and she wrote back sending me to somebody at Rutgers, and the person at Rutgers sent me to somebody at University of Pennsylvania. They sent me to somebody at Columbia, and the person at Columbia finally was the one who could help us teach Serena how to talk. That was the second really important thing. And the third thing was that I found the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children. And the message of hope that I got there really gave me strength. And nobody knew, including me, whether there were going to be ultimately limitations in my daughter's life. But they basically said to me, it doesn't matter. Just keep pushing along. Just keep pushing for progress and make sure you get the very most, make sure she reaches all of her potential, whatever it was.
Early schooling. Carol?
Her early schooling?
I can't hear. I can't hear. Hello? Can anyone hear me? Are you there, Carol?
Jerry, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Tell us about Serena's early school experiences. What school did she go? Was it regular school, or did she, just fill in the details of her early, grammar school.
I went around looking at preschools with the child study team here. That's the special education team here in Madison. And so she spent, the school that I liked the best wouldn't take her. The teacher said, but she's blind. She has to go to the place where the blind people go. And she didn't have any clue. And I knew by that time that blind kids went to regular school. And I thought it was interesting that a special education teacher didn't know that. And then the other school that I liked a lot said that she had way too many disabilities and they couldn't possibly educate her there. So my heart was really broken. In the end, we found a good special preschool that she went to when she was 3 years old and 4 years old. When she was 4 and 5, she also went to a Montessori school. Montessori schools are known for their hands-on materials, so that was terrific for her. When she was 5, she went to a regular education preschool, 1 extra year. And then when she turned 6, she started in kindergarten in our public school system here, and she continued in public school from there on.
You know what I noticed, and I think you'll agree with me, Janie, that there's a lot of children and even adults who are at that stage where they needed that intensive, hands-on work, and they don't get it, and they'll just sit in the home and they won't achieve because what someone says to them is, well, all you could do is reach this level, and that's all you'll get, and their expectation is low. But wouldn't you agree, Janie, that if you have a high expectation, you could reach it? Because if you have a low one, that's all you're going to reach.
Exactly. And I think the more that you believe in yourself, or if somebody believes in you, if somebody tells you, look, you really can't play sports, and maybe you really can't, but maybe you really can, or you can't play an instrument, you really have no talent. Well, how do you know? I didn't even pick up an instrument, or whatever. So you have to have the self-motivation, or somebody has to have that motivation for you to believe in you, to give you a chance to make it work. And I think that that's really important, to just get out there and give it a try. And if that road doesn't work, there's another road, and you can get on that path. So that's the message I take from this. And I just love this whole story. I think it's a fabulous story, especially when you know the end. Well, it's not the end. It's like chapter 7 out of, 20 chapters for Serena. But, obviously as she got into later life. And I wanted to ask you another question, Carol. I know you have an older son. How did he handle all this as a son who could see with a sister who couldn't?
Yeah, well, John is younger than Serena.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came on
that.
the scene, she was almost 3 when he was born. And as a typical second-born, he totally idolized his older sister. And as a typical firstborn, she would just knock him away and didn't want anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they became great friends.
That's funny.
But I remember one instant when they were sitting across the table from each other in their little sassy seats having lunch. And John was trying mightily to catch Serena's eye, to get her attention. And I noticed it. So I tapped Serena on the hand, and I said, Serena, John is trying to give you something. So he watched me tap her on the hand. So he took the little thing he was trying to give her, he tapped her on the hand, and she opened her hand. And he gave her the object, and that he understood from that moment on that we're going to use some alternative techniques here. And, he grew up with it, so it's totally second nature to him.
Great.
That's amazing. But Carol, before you mentioned about the parents of blind children, and I know you have some experience with them, but how important do what is the weight of importance you put on finding those in similar situations? As David Dino Terrace once told me, don't reinvent the wheel. I don't know why I would want to try, but how important is finding people in like situations? How did that help you over the years?
Well, it's really reassuring when you find somebody who's been down the road already, and they can, first of all, they've lived to tell the tale. The parent has survived it. The child has survived it. They've learned things on the way. They can share that with you. And then, of course, with our organization, the special thing is that we connect with blind mentors. And that, to me, was, astronomically important, because I got to see what happens after your blind child is finished being a blind child. There can be a life. There can be a future. And those people were so important in my life. They had no idea how closely I was watching them. And then, of course, those people in Serena's life were her mentors, her buddies, her friends. And since most of us live in communities where there aren't that many blind people, that was a real normalizing thing for her, too, because we just knew lots and lots of blind people.
If someone out there wanted to reach you, how would they contact you? You have a website, a telephone, smoke signals. How do you accept correspondence?
Yep, they can email me at blindchildren@verizon.net. They can check our website, blindchildren.org.
Wow. Now, will you have? It's easy for you to say. Will you be having an upcoming event in New Jersey? Or did we pass that already?
Or will. We'll be holding our When I Grow Up seminar on
That's
Saturday, April 27th at Columbo's Restaurant, Tinton Falls, New Jersey. We hope everyone can come. We're going to have a great day. Our special guest will be Eric Guillory from Louisiana, and it's going to be a wonderful day of information and inspiration.
Now, what was that date again?
Saturday, April 27th.
Saturday, April 27th. Well, that sounds good. So, Janie, you have any questions?
I
Did
do.
we forget
I want to
anything?
ask you, me, the book lady, how did you get started writing books, and how many books have you written, and what enjoyment or frustrations did you have in doing that task?
Well, the story of my books really is the story of Serena's education. When she was going to start kindergarten, so suddenly now she's going to be in the public school, and I started asking everybody, what does it look like? How does it look to have a blind child included in the classroom? What does it look like? And I was searching for information, and there was nothing out there. So my first book, The Bridge to Braille, came out of my experience of making Serena's first couple of years of education work for her. I found out that I had some pretty good ideas about how to do it, and I was able to be a real part of the team to put her education together. So I have now 4 books out, and I think I have 2 more left in me before I'm done.
Wow. Well, as soon as they get on board, we'll be downloading them. I'll tell you, it's really a great thing that you're working out there and getting the information out to others who might not really have access to you personally, but might read that book. So I think that's a valuable thing.
Well, it's a real pleasure to me. When I was young, I wanted to be a writer, and I always thought I was going to write novels or poetry or something. I didn't know I'd be writing this kind of book, but, in a way, I think it really worked out for the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we're down to a last couple of minutes. Carol, I just want to ask you if there's anything that you'd like to say or any word of encouragement to someone who might be in a similar situation, whether the child or parent of a child, or it could be a blind adult where professionals or family members have told them, why don't you just give up? So if you can give us like a minute's worth of that, what do you think?
I'd be happy to. I think the first thing is to find out about successful blind people. So go on the Blind Children website and read. We have a section called Good Stories, and they're just stories about people living their lives. Now, the people happen to be very, very high achieving. Now, why is that good to know about? Because you find out that blindness doesn't have to stop you from achieving. Once you know that, then your expectations can rise. Once your expectations rise, all you have left is to find out how to do it. And we're all out here ready to help you. So those would be my words of advice.
Well, and also for adults, they can go to the nfb.org website under publications and under Kernel Books, and there's stories of by blind people written by themselves, and I think we might find Serena and or Carol there, right?
It's a good chance.
Yeah, you might. So, but one of the things that, and we'd like to thank you, Carol, of course, for taking your time out of your busy schedule, and I know you do have a busy schedule, but just want to speak a word of encouragement to those out there who are listening. One of the things that you said to me really struck me about the professionals or family members or whoever saying that all you could achieve is say the 3-foot level, and if you think that's all you could achieve when you hit the 3-foot level, well, you've done what you think you could do, and you won't go any higher. But if someone has very high expectations for you, then you'll reach it. And the other thing that you said was that there are people who have gone through and probably worse situations, because you always hear, well, listen to my story, and then someone will say, well, listen to my story. We were so poor, we were hungry. I had to get up a half an hour before I went to sleep in order to get to work. And it's amazing what people will tell you. But how we doing there with time there, Lenny? Okay, so the thought is keep hope alive, as Reverend Jackson said, and we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to come back with Serena, whom we've been talking about, and I'm sure she wants to get a word in, and we're going to talk about success, and we're going to, and I want to leave this thought with all those listening out there. Remember, in the crib, hands not moving. How did she do it? Where is she at now? How and what and where and all the things you learn about writing. So we're going to go away for 4 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Hi, this is Kathy Gabry. I'm the editor of The Sounding Board, the magazine of the National Federation of the Blind of New Jersey. I'd like you to know that highlights of The Sounding Board are now available as a digital broadcast. Check us out online at www.nfbnj.org or as a podcast at www.throughouroureyes.org. We look forward to your thoughts, ideas, and articles. Please send them to me at specialk38@aol.com.
Are you stuck in front of your computer listening to our shows? Well, you may be happy to know that you don't have to be anymore. Hi, this is Keith Zalley, your announcer here at WTOE Radio. Of course, you know we broadcast live on throughouroureyes.org, but did you know we simulcast on Facebook, Ustream.tv, as well as all of our show's host websites? And now you don't have to be stuck trying to catch your favorite show on your computer. You can listen or even watch our shows live right on your smartphone or iPad. During broadcast nights, just point your phone or iPad browser to our mobile site, m.throughouroureyes.org, and click on the Listen or Watch Live link. WTOE also offers many smart apps for your iPhone, BlackBerry, Android, Windows Mobile, or Nokia phones, iPads too, all for free. Visit our main site, www.throughouroureyes.org/appstores.html, and download your free app today.
Have you ever lost a cat? And have you ever wanted to get your cat back after you lost it? Hi there, I'm Andrew Hoffman. I went on this website called inventnow.org. Then I decided to make an invention of my own. It's called the Lost Cat Magnet invention. So you can get your cat back after you lost it. Just turn it on, and lost cats stick to it. That's a good cat. If your cat was hiding up in a tree, it won't be up a tree anymore. It will be stuck to the Lost Cat Magnet. And sometimes they fly toward you in the air. Just listen to one satisfied cat. See, that's proof. You should go to the inventnow.org website too. But just remember one thing. Don't do a lost cat magnet.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the National Inventors Hall of Fame Foundation, and the Ad Council.
Nothing inspires imagination like reading. And it's never too early to start reading to your children. When you open a book, you can explore new worlds like the ones in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Everything you see is Narnia.
Impossible. You can make new friends, discover amazing adventures, and most of all, have fun.
Are you prepared for what awaits you?
To find out more about the wonders of reading, you can visit the Library of Congress website at www.loc.gov. There, you can learn more about books, play fun games, discover cool facts, and so much more. you can log on to www.loc.gov and let your journey begin. This message has been brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life.
Welcome to On the Bright Side with Janie and Jerry. Well, we're continuing our show. We want to thank Carol Castellano for the first half of the show. And now we are going to be talking to Serena Cucco, her daughter. And Serena, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's so nice of you to accept our invitation to be on a guest on our show. So how you doing? How's the weather up there in Jersey?
I'm good. The weather's a little cold, but we'll get there.
I know. Now, I don't know if you were able to listen to what we were talking about. We were talking about you, of course, but you know your own story. And where we left off, you were in grammar school, and what I'd like to do, well, actually, what I'd like to do is I want you to just talk about for a minute or two your high school experiences and whether your guidance counselors thought college was for you or what did they think was in store for you. So just go over a little bit of your high school career.
Well, first of all, yes, my guidance counselors treated me pretty equally. Decided people. I don't bet they really thought about it, and me.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't recall specifically any advice they may have given me. Mostly I searched for colleges with my mom just outside of school from when I go to school.
You have to, Serena, when you talk a little bit closer into the mouthpiece of the phone. So, Serena, when you were born, and up until your beginning of your schooling, the professionals really didn't think highly of what your expectations would be, and as I know, you have achieved more than a lot of people have. So what I'd like for you to do is to, like I said, the professionals were saying that even regular schooling wouldn't, might not be appropriate for you. But you did graduate from grammar school. You did graduate from high school. And what did you do after high school?
I graduated from Manhattanville College. It's up in Westchester County, New York. I worked for 2 years through an AmeriCorps grant, and then I went to graduate school.
And what was the school you went to, the graduate school?
Repeat what you said, I'm sorry.
What was the graduate school you went to?
Rutgers.
My alma mater. Isn't that right, Janie? Isn't that a nice story?
Serena, hi, honey. How are you?
Good. It was my master's in social work.
That's fabulous. And are you doing that now? Are you working?
Not yet, because I'm still studying to take my state licensing exam. It takes a couple of weeks.
So when did you graduate?
January of this year.
Oh, that's terrific. Just now.
Yep.
Oh,
I'll be attending the ceremony in May.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, we wish you lots of luck with that, boy.
Yes, mazel tov. So, Serena, when you get your license, where do you think you want to work? Did you have any thoughts on what where you would like to go with your career?
I'm considering working with the elderly. I
would be good.
Experience with my elderly relatives, so.
You would work well with us, with me and Janie, right, Janie?
Yeah, you have a great personality for working with seniors because you're pretty patient, as far as I know, and I think you need to do that with children and with seniors. So I wish you a lot of luck with that. I was going to ask you, Serena, growing up in the situation you were with your mom as your advocate, you know, your mom is awesome. We all know that, and you're awesome. But what about, where do your brother and your dad fit into that family atmosphere when you were growing up? I mean, how did they help you achieve where you are? We know what mom did, but how did dad and your brother John, I believe, help you become who you are?
I have to think about that one. No, my dad was always supportive of everything I did. My brother was too, certainly.
And do you think that
John insisted that I participate in house chores equally?
That sounds like a brotherly thing. My brothers used to say that too. We did something. We brought a T-shirt up the stairs. Jane, you do all the laundry. I'm like, how does that equate? Yeah.
That's funny. Serena, do you think that you want to go for more schooling, or are you for your doc? I could just see it, Dr. Serena, maybe a TV show. What do you think, Janie? Dr. Serena will solve all your problems.
In this
model. Jerry. I've had enough.
That's funny. So Janie, tell us about the Janie. You're wait. Who am I talking to? Serena, right? Serena, you're Serena, aren't you?
Yourself, I think, is what you're doing.
Yeah. So tell us about your college career. You know, like your studies. Did the people in the college did they encourage you, or did they treat you just like any other smart alecky kid who's smart, or how did they treat you?
They treated me equally. Trying to remember any. There were not too many issues that I could remember. It was a very diverse college, so there were friends from various countries, disabilities, not so.
And when you're talking about this, are you speaking specifically about Rutgers, or are you speaking like Manhattanville? I know was a small.
Manhattanville is what I was referring to, although Rutgers certainly they treated me pretty equally as well. I've had 2 experiences with professors and friends, so.
So let me ask you this, Serena. We know that you're interested in social work, obviously, with a master's. But what other things do you like to do? What other hobbies, or when you have if you have a spare moment, how do you see yourself? Relaxing, listening to a book, dancing? What kind of things do you like to do?
Body surfing in the ocean and
cool
boarding, which is my version of water skiing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a lot of fun.
Jerry, what do you like to do in their spare time?
Eat, sleep, watch, listen to described. I found this website to listen to the Star Trek, different Star Trek episodes, and the described, and it's really interesting. I like to do that, but Serena, I've known you since 1994.
Yeah.
I've seen you how you've grown up and matured, and I hope to mature one day too. As myself, one of my friends told me years ago I was a nut, and I told him I matured. He goes, "Yeah, you're a full-grown nut now." But tell me about your experiences with. Years ago, you were tutoring someone was it in Braille, or were you tutoring them to them in English? Do you remember what?
Yes.
What that was?
Both, actually. She was Hispanic from Ecuador, and she had never been able to go to school. So I tutored her in both Braille and English, and learning about American culture. And she's still my friend.
Wow, that's exciting. Janie, I forgot to give the phone number out.
Oh, my goodness. If you want to call and talk to Serena, Jerry, Janie, or have a question for Carol, please call 1-888-572-6000. 1-888-572-0141. That's, I don't know if I can do it as well as you, Jerry. 1-888-572-0141. We'd love to hear from you with a shout out or a comment, question, anything you need to say. That's fine. Money, donations, anything.
Well, I think we have a caller on line 15. Caller on line 15.
Wow.
Enter and tell us who you are.
Yes, good evening. This is a friend of Serena's. I don't know if you can recognize my voice, Serena. I'll give you a hint. Joe Ruffalo. Hey, she got it. Very good. Very good. Hey, I'm listening to the show. I've known you guys forever. And I was going to ask you a question, but Jerry kind of like asked the same question. You have received much from many of our members in the National Federation of the Blind. How are you giving back to those who are in need?
I'm basically giving advice when if I'm asked for it. And I'm on the National Association of Blind Students mailing listserv. I'm a New Jersey one also.
No, that's good.
And I know you've helped us in the past with some Spanish-speaking potential members, and you've helped do that. I know you read Braille in English, and I guess you read Braille in Spanish. I know you speak Spanish quite nicely.
Yes.
And I know you are a heavy, and people don't know this now, she's a heavy drinker. She loves to drink double shots of apple juice. Mott's, is it? You like Mott's, or you like... I always tease Serena about not drinking, and that's why she's a sober young lady. But Serena, I've known you forever. I know you're a baseball fan, a football fan. Jerry's a Giant fan, but he turned into an air conditioner, so we don't go there. Right. I don't want to keep you, Serena. We have a date when you go to Orlando this summer, I hope.
All right.
All right, we have a date. We have a date. Don't turn me down over the radio. People got to listen. Say, yes, Joe, we have a date. Make me feel good. Then break you off after the phone call. All right, I'm going to sit back and listen to you guys, okay?
Very good. Thanks for calling.
Take care, guys.
Who was that guy?
Oh, that masked man, yeah.
But Serena, if someone wanted to reach you, do you have an email address or something where they could email you and ask a question or comment? Or
you ready?
Go ahead.
All right. Serena.c.cucco@gmail.com.
Could you spell your last name for them?
Yes. C-U-C-C-O.
Perfect.
That sounds good. Janie, do you have any last remarks before we go on to our next segmente?
No, I just want to say you're a very good inspiration to those students that think they can't achieve. Here we have Serena, totally blind, that made it through school, so there's no excuse. You can do it too. You've got to just find a way to do it. She did. You can. She graduated college. She's getting her master's. She finished that. She's going through her testing, and she'll be graduating this spring. And we want to encourage you to follow her path in your own way, in your own footsteps, and know that there's a way to make it happen. And so I thank you for that, Serena. Thank you for being an inspiration to students that think they can't do it. Parents are applauding at home, going, yes, my child can read. Yes, he's got to work. Yes, Serena did it. So you might be getting some calls from kids like, what? But I think it's great.
You're welcome.
Now, Serena, in 30 seconds, could you give us your word of encouragement to someone who might be in your situation that you were in, or an adult, maybe newly blind? Just give a 30-second exhortation as to what they should do in the situation they're in.
I guess always be inspired. And if you're in high school in New Jersey, join the LEAD program. Or if you're not, go to one of the NFB centers. And then to get your skills and training.
Well, that's
very
great
important
advice.
to get skills and training. All right, Serena, thank you so much for being our guest. And I booked my time in. It sounds like I was booked in Orlando, and I'll see you in Orlando. Thank you, Serena, for being our guest.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and lots of luck to you. Keep us posted. Maybe we'll get an update on you in another couple of months.
Okay.
Dr. Serena.
Never, Jerry.
Well, anyway, Jenny, wasn't that an interesting a couple of people? Why am I looking as if you were over there in the corner when I should be looking straight?
I'm looking at my screen on my laptop, and I can see your lips move. Of course, they're not moving, but I visualize your lips moving and your big face, your nice round face, and a jovial smile. That's what I picture. So,
thank you.
I don't know if you're looking like that, but that's what I see. I understand you have a huge beard.
For those of you that can't see or don't want to look at me, I have the Santa Claus beard. I actually had it trimmed because the sideburns were going out and birds were nesting in it, so we had to get rid of that. And it's all the way down to my second button of my shirt. And as soon as it gets really hot down here, I'm going to probably shave it. I don't know. I might want to see how long it is, but we'll see. But anyway, Jenny, we have a few minutes left. Could you give us can we turn the corner to the book?
We can turn the corner to the book corner. Well, of course, the first book I read was one of Carol's. I think it was written in 2005 or 6. It's about an 8-hour book. It's on Bard, so that's why I read it. I love to support Bard and all of the things that it does to enable us to download our own books at our own time, 4 a.m. A lot of times I'm online doing that. And it's called Making It Work, Educating the Blind and Visually Impaired Student. And let me tell you something. In a regular classroom, I think is the end part. It's a fabulous book. Carol brings into it her own situation and makes you feel a part of it. You'd think it's like a treatise, like a workbook for teachers. And it is. But anybody can read it. It's not this highfalutin wording that, what does that mean and what does that mean? It's pretty straightforward, and it's got a huge message of which find who you need to find, get what you need to get done, and just do it. There's a way to make it work. So that's the book I would highly recommend you reading. The second book I read was Do You Know the Color Blue? And Other Questions Kids Might Ask. And that was written by Sally Alexander. Sally Alexander. Let's leave it at that. Her middle name I can't think of this minute. It's about a 3-hour book. It's very short. It's really geared for 4th to 7th grade. Jerry, you and Joe will be able to understand this book. It's really written very well. She was blind also and raised children and what have you, and she's an older woman now. And she has, I think, 13 or 14 little mini chapters of which questions that children have asked her as she's gone doing presentations to schools. One of which is, do you remember the color blue? How do you do such and such? I don't want to give it away because each little mini chapter has its own message. And that's a very valuable book. Also on Bard, Do You Remember the Color Blue? By Sally Alexander, and Making It Work by Carol Castellano. So those are my books for the book corner for tonight.
Well, that's very good. We were talking about the Bard website,
yes.
And there is a survey that you can take out there of those that are users or former users or who want to be users for about that, right, Janie?
There is, and I did it. It takes about 20 minutes, but it's a really good. Did you do the survey, Jer?
Not yet, but I was going to say that if you can give them our contact information in our mailbag, then we can give them information about it.
We sure can. All you have to do is write to www.throughouroureyes.org/ email, if you can remember all that, or send an email to jdegan16. That's probably easier. JDEGEN 16 at Comcast.net. I will send you the link. You click on the link, and there's a great survey with, I don't know, maybe 50 questions. Might take you, if you really do it well, it will take you about 20 to 25 minutes. And there's lots of spaces to put in your own information. Like it'll ask you, and other comments you have about this. For instance, downloading books. Who downloads books for you? How did you hear about the Bard site? Do you have difficulties in the following? How would you rate on a scale from highly dissatisfied to highly satisfied? What books do you like to listen to? What suggestions do you have for Bard? One of the suggestions I had personally for Bard is sometimes they have books that are in a series and they have books 2, 3, 6, and 7. And if I want to read the series, I want to usually start at book 1. So that's what I wrote. If you're going to put a series of books, at least start with books 1, 2, 3, and then add after that. Because somebody will put it in order according to the dates, and then later on, a book from 2002 comes up, and that's the first book. So I think that was what I wrote, but I mean, you can write whatever you want, and I think it's a very valuable link, and we'll include it next month in the show. I'll have it written somewhere, and we'll show it up somehow, so you'll be able to get it. But hopefully, you'll write to jdegan16@comcast.net and say survey in the subject, and I'll know what you mean, and I'll open it up, and I'll send it to you.
Well, we got about 3 minutes left, and I wanted to mention to folk out there that some probably will applaud this, but I won't be on the show next month. I will be motivating up from North Carolina to New Jersey to take the NFB of New Jersey cruise. So I'll be going to Bermuda, and we're going to have a very special guest host, right, Janie?
We are. I think our guest host is going to be Trish Ebel, and we should have a guest if she's well again. She was actually hurt for a while, but hopefully she's feeling better, and it's Mary Kaplan from the NJSLTBBC, otherwise known as the New Jersey State Library Talking Book and Braille Center, or the Trenton Library for the Blind is how most people call it. And she's going to tell us all about the new things on the BARD website, the wish list, how to go to a link on a book and find the author and go to that link, or inspirations and go to that link. It's really quite neat. So she'll be the show, of course, is April 8th at 8 p.m. 4/8 at 8.
And one of the things I wanted to mention is that we have the library shows on the WTOE Internet Radio Network, plus a lot of other interesting shows, and we would encourage you to go to our website and check them out and see, because I mean, I know we do have the best show, but there's other shows that are out there. So we talked about the next show. Anything you want to give a shout out to? Anybody get married lately?
Oh, well, I said that didn't I say that last month? No, I didn't, because it happened. Happy, happy, happy wedding day to Rebecca. She was Rebecca Irvin, and she married Solomon Bryant. And just the other night, on Monday night, on our senior division call, she said, Rebecca Bryant is here as secretary of the senior division. So we want to put a special shout out to Rebecca Bryant and Solomon Bryant, who got married on February 16th at her Northern Chapter Spaghetti Luncheon. And we just think it's the greatest. They're beaming. And this is an interesting little aside, Jerry. We had our ECHO meeting last Wednesday on March 6th. And Rebecca and Solomon were supposed to come, and the meeting started at noon, and it's 12:30, and it's 1 o'clock. And I started to call Rebecca, and Access Link pulled in, and she said, sorry, we're late. We had to come right from Solomon's stress test. And my brother Joe goes, you're married 11 days, and he already needs a stress test?
That's funny. Well, we also want to just give our thoughts and prayers and say hi to Tara Carty, and get well soon. And right now we're down to the last 30 seconds, so I'm going to say to you, Janie, would you like to say good night, Janie?
I would like to say good night, Janie, and before I do that, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, whether you celebrate Passover or Easter, because we'll be doing that in just a few short weeks. And I'd like to say good night to Jerry and Lenny and Lori, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And always look on the bright side. That's from Janie. Good night, folks. Good night, Jerry.
Good night, Janie, and always look on the bright side. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life.
All words, ideas, and content expressed on the bright side are solely those of Jane Degenshine and Jerry Marino,
and not necessarily those of the National Federation of the Blind, the Northeast New Jersey Chapter, or WTOE Internet Radio Network.
If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten, and that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be silly chumps. Just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. Hey, always look on the bright side of life. Come on guys, cheer up. Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Worst things happen at sea, you know. Always look on the bright side of life. I mean, what you gonna lose? You know, you come from nothing, you're going back to nothing. What have you lost? Always look on the bright side of life.
Hi, this is Joe Ruffalo of WTOE Radio. If you are a resident in New Jersey and would like to join one of our chapters or have some more information about our chapters, please contact me at 973-743-0075 or email me at nfbnj@yahoo.com.
Hi, I'm Keith Zalley, your announcer here at throughoureyes.org. I'd like to ask all our listeners who have not yet registered at Through Our Eyes to consider doing so. Registering helps us ascertain whom our listeners are, where they come from, if they are blind or visually impaired, as well as other important information which helps us guide us in providing programming that will meet our visitors' needs. I urge all our listeners to register today. It's free and only takes a minute to complete the process. Please read our privacy policy so you can be assured that the information you provide stays with us and only us, and you'll never get any unwanted emails. Are you stuck in front of your computer listening to our shows? Well, you may be happy to know that you don't have to be anymore. Hi, this is Keith Zalley, your announcer here at WTOE Radio. Of course, you know we broadcast live on throughoureyes.org, but did you know we simulcast on Facebook, Ustream.tv, as well as all of our show's host websites? And now you don't have to be stuck trying to catch your favorite show on your computer. You can listen or even watch our shows live right on your smartphone or iPad. During broadcast nights, just point your phone or iPad browser to our mobile site, m.throughoureyes.org, and click on the Listen or Watch Live link. WTOE also offers many smart apps for your iPhone, BlackBerry, Android, Windows Mobile, or Nokia phones, iPads too. All for free. Visit our main site, www.throughoureyes.org/appstores.html, and download your free app today. Hi, I'm Keith Zalley, your announcer here at throughoureyes.org. Thanks for tuning in to WTOE Radio's live broadcast. Our recording session will start shortly. While you are waiting, I'd like to ask all our listeners who have not yet registered at Through Our Eyes to consider doing so. Registering helps us ascertain whom our listeners are, where they come from, if they are blind or visually impaired, as well as other important information which helps us guide us in providing programming that will meet our visitors' needs. I urge all our listeners to register today. It's free and only takes a minute to complete the process. Please read our privacy policy so you can be assured that the information you provide stays with us and only us, and you'll never get any unwanted emails. Well, we're almost ready to begin. Since what you are about to listen to is live, after each recording of the show, you'll hear approximately 15 minutes of music. This is the time we are contacting our next guest for the next show. When the show starts, you'll hear it in its entirety. Our recording sessions usually comprise 3 separate shows, each about 15 to 20 minutes in length, with approximately 15 minutes between each session. So once again, thanks for listening to WTOE Radio Live. Our recording session will start momentarily. I'm Keith Zalley. next hour, join Steve and his guests as they talk about topics geared to educate and inform his audience. Listen as Steve brings his unique experiences as an author, business leader, teacher, and law enforcement professional to the conversation. Together with outstanding guests, Steve asks the questions that make a difference in his listeners' lives. You're guaranteed to be better off after you listen to the KOVACS Perspective than before his show started. So, sit back, relax, and see what his show can do for you.
KOVACS Perspective, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Steve Kovacs. Great to have you here again this week. Today's program is about changing the seemingly unchangeable, or really the undoable, and coming to reasonable terms. Is that possible? Is it really possible to change things that seem unchangeable or really undoable? Can we be reasonable? Can things really change? What am I talking about? I'm talking about a number of things. I'm talking about personal issues between men and women, between men and their children, between women and their children and daughters and sons, peace, war, gun control, global warming, or whatever the correct political term is nowadays. Is it climate change? Personal conflicts, as I mentioned, between people, peace in the Middle East. All huge conflicts. All have sides. And, you know, the sides seem to have their feet in the mud. I feel this way about it. I feel this way about it. Feet in the mud, they're not going anywhere. Attorneys constantly arguing in courts, fighting lawsuits. Is there a way to solve these kind of things? And what does solve really mean? But are we all stuck on our side, or can we compromise? Can we compromise and yet win, so to speak? Can we compromise on peace in the Middle East and still win our side? Can we compromise on gun control or lack thereof, compromise on that huge issue, and still win our side? Can we compromise when we argue with our fellow coworkers or have a disagreement or have a conflict? Is there reasonable ways to conduct ourselves, to negotiate, to talk, and yet win for our side and yet win for the other side? Now, am I smoking some funny stuff where I'm even thinking this? But I want to say this, that we have to compromise on some of life's challenges and problems, do we not? Do we just stick in the mud and just kill each other? It's been done that way for centuries and since kind of the dawn of time. But we have been more intelligent, more civilized as time goes on. But yet, with some of these conflicts and our human conflicts where domestic violence occurs and people kill each other, those kind of seem stagnant from generations ago. We have two guests today, basically talking about the same kind of topic, a little bit different. They bring to the table a different way to hit these areas and solve them. But excellent, outstanding guests, authors, experts in this field, and they'll enlighten us, hopefully, and tell us how maybe reasonableness works in all these areas. So you got to stick around. Great topic waiting for us. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
We'll be right back with Steve and his guests right after these few messages.
What is a hero? Are heroes born, or are they made? In after-school programs, your kids will uncover hidden strengths, discover they have the power to change their future, and find the hero inside themselves. Let us know you on after-school programs in your area. Call 1-800-USA-LEARN. After-school programs, helping kids find the hero within.
In the great scheme of things, a minute isn't all that much. Unless you happen to have a stroke. All of a sudden, those minutes count. Minutes that could mean losing your ability to talk. Minutes that could mean losing your ability to walk. Talking, moving, walking, gone. Which is why, if you can get help in time, your stroke can be treated. The warning signs of a stroke include sudden numbness or weakness of the face, sudden trouble seeing, speaking, or understanding, If you experience this, call 911 immediately, because time lost is brain lost. Visit strokeassociation.org or call 1-888-4STROKE today. A public service announcement brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Know the facts about African Americans and stroke. To join the movement to stop stroke, visit strokeassociation.org today.
If you think depression is all in a person's head, you're right. It's a brain illness. And like other illnesses, it has symptoms. Depression can make those who suffer from it feel hopeless. It can even lead to suicide. Learn how to stop depression from taking another life. Call SAVE, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, 1-888-511-SAVE, on the web at save.org.
And now back to the KOVACS Perspective.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Steve KOVACS with the KOVACS Perspective. We're going to be talking about conflict, as I mentioned before we went to a break. And our first guest is an ex-trial attorney for 25 years. He was an attorney, and now he's a mediator. He's the author of a book called How Modern Diplomatic Strategies Could Be, how it could resolve world conflicts. So again, how modern diplomatic strategies could better resolve world conflicts. Interesting book to remember. A unique topic, and it covers a ton, doesn't it? How can diplomatic strategies, usually when I think of diplomatic anything, I think of just too much talk and no real guts behind it, no real, nothing solid behind it, just talk. But this is not what this individual guest is about. Again, for 25 years, he was an attorney. Now he is a mediator. So please join me and welcome our first guest, Douglas Noll. How are you, Doug?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good, Doug. When I knew you were going to be our guest, what struck me is a couple of things. That you were an attorney for 25 years, and I know a lot of attorneys, Doug, and don't they, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm here to ask questions and get you, the experts, answers. Aren't attorneys, isn't part of their job to fight, to have conflict, and to stretch it out to make more money? Or am I just really simplifying attorneys?
Well, I think that your statement is true for some lawyers. I think there are some lawyers who prolong litigation for their own pocketbooks. And I think there are a lot of lawyers who believe that adversary ideology and zealous advocacy is the ethical precept of what it means to be a lawyer. They're wrong, but a lot of lawyers believe that. And frankly, it's a fault of our legal education system that causes that. We train lawyers to be appellate judges. We don't train them to be peacemakers. And they come out of law school without any of the skill sets that it takes to resolve conflicts in a non-litigious way. And lawyers have to spend many, many years getting beat up before they finally figure out that there are better, more effective ways of resolving conflict than through litigation. And in international conflict, it's the same thing. War or violence is a primitive way of resolving conflict, and usually it's resorted to because people don't feel like they have any other options.
You know what I liked what you said, Doug, is that it's a fault of how attorneys are trained, and you say they're trained, what did you say, to be appellate-type individuals instead of peacemakers?
Right. Well, I'm a law professor, and the way that law is taught in law schools goes back to the 19th century through what's known as the casebook method. And basically, professors write these books, these textbooks that lawyers use, that have the most bizarre, crazy, insane, most idiotic circumstances that you can possibly imagine. Incredibly dysfunctional. That's how they make it into the casebook. So a law student is fed on 3 or 4 years of incredible dysfunction around the way that have made it up to the appellate courts. And so all they learn how to do, really in law school, is learn how to read appellate decisions and opinions and write them. And as all law firms know, lawyers coming out of law school don't have a clue how to practice law, and they don't have a clue how to solve problems. So that's part of our problem. And the ABA's got to be really, they're starting to address that. But they're so slow to move, it'll be years before solutions really float down through the law curriculum.
In the long run, Doug, an attorney that is a peacemaker that can kick butt and take names and solve and cause peace between two parties is really a great attorney, and that word of mouth is apt to get out, isn't it?
I think so. I believe that negotiation is the lawyering skill of the 21st century. I think that the trial lawyer, the myth of the trial lawyer is still alive, but the actuality, the reality of the trial lawyer is dead. Here in California, the civil courts are shut down. And the idea of becoming a gunslinging lawyer going in to vindicate the rights of parties is a dead idea. And so young lawyers coming out of law school now will have to educate themselves in the skills of legal negotiation. And in fact, I addressed that by I just launched an online course for young lawyers called Negotiation Mastery for the Legal Pro, to teach young lawyers how to do this because they don't know how to negotiate. And so if the people who are responsible for helping non-lawyers to resolve conflicts don't know how to negotiate, how do we ever find peace?
Well, Doug, that's it. Doug, you just said it right there. How do we find it? What happens is we don't. We just act at one time. It drags on, and everybody hates everybody, and they just close cases, I guess, from my experience. They're just tired. They're sweating. They just, okay, well, we'll do this. We've spent $1 billion, and I don't mean that literally, but they just collapse and say this is the best it gets. So I got to believe what you're saying is the way to go. But let me talk about let's go to the core here, Doug. You believe, and this was very interesting in research that we did on you, Doug, because we want to get the best info, is that this really caught me, that our brain is hardwired for conflict. You got to tell the folks about what you mean by that.
Well, we are hardwired for conflict. We're also hardwired for peace. So we have inherent capacities, just like we have inherent capacities for good, and we have an inherent capacity for evil. The problem is that our fear response system is automatic, it's preconscious, and it gets triggered very, very rapidly. The peace system of our brain operates a lot more slowly. It's neurohormonally based. And so it is very slow to react to situations. And it's obvious why that is. Those of our predecessors that cuddled up to saber-toothed tigers 100,000 years ago got cleaned out of the gene pool. So what we have today is we're left with a whole bunch of paranoid genes that immediately go into fight or flight whenever there's the slightest bit of threat. And the thing that's really interesting is that our brains cannot distinguish between a social threat, and a physical threat. So we are going to get just as triggered, just as reactive, just as angry, just as fearful in a social situation where we feel our identity threatened as we are as if somebody's pointing a gun at us. And Doug, it takes a lot of work to overcome that.
Doug, there's two things. First of all, I'm still kind of smiling about your example about snuggling up with a saber tooth. The people that did that fell out of the gene pool, and that was well put. Now, this I didn't know, that an assault on our ego, on us, ourselves, if somebody makes us feel that or indicates that we're not that good, is it hits us similarly like somebody threatening us physically?
Absolutely. An insult to your identity or a disrespectful comment or the sense of injustice will be triggered in the emotional centers of the brain exactly as if somebody were pointing a gun or taking a baseball bat to you. There are parts of your brain that cannot distinguish between a physical threat and a social threat. And then what happens is we unconsciously react, and that immediately leads us into somatic reaction. Hands get sweaty, face gets flushed, heartbeat goes up, and then we respond. And we typically respond preconsciously with violence, which is how conflicts escalate. You were talking about domestic violence at the top of the show. That's how domestic violence starts. It's unconscious, triggered reactions, learned reactions that have to be deprogrammed out of people in order to stop that sort of thing. And you have to want to deprogram yourself. It's not easy work. It can be done, but it's not easy.
Well, I think what you just laid for our listeners, and you laid for me a groundwork on where it comes from. I did not know this, that when somebody insults our identity, as you mentioned it, it's so similar, as if somebody was holding a gun, or it's just like it. We react the same way. And you also mentioned earlier that reaction flies out immediately, as opposed to the opposite, where and I don't know exactly how you put it, but the peaceful one, or the more reasonable way to deal with it, takes time. So what do? Doug, we're at work, and one of our coworkers says something demeaning to us, and we get a little bit sweaty, and we start breathing heavier, and we want to jump. We're ready for action because it's similar to somebody holding a knife or a saber-toothed tiger on a tree looking at us, and we see it. So that's the first thing that happens. So what do we do? Okay, now we know why it happens. Our identity's been insulted. We're starting to sweat. We're ready to rock and roll. We're tightening our fists. We're ready to jump down their throat, either verbally or physically. We know why it's happening, and we're ready to go. So what do we do now?
In that moment, with no practice and no forethought, walk away. Don't say a word. Just turn and walk away. Go outside and get some air.
All right, now practice. How does practice? Practice makes perfect in anything. Does your book address how one can practice certain strategies to not just walk away?
Pardon me now?
Does your book address specific strategies instead of just walking away, on how people can practice certain strategies and deal with that conflict instead of punching them, but converse or whatever? Did I lose you, Doug?
No. What Elusive Peace is about is international conflict mediation, and I basically argue in the book that we can no longer allow our governments and our foreign diplomats to be responsible for peacemaking. We need to turn this over to professionally trained people. And I give example after example of how peace talks have been botched by incompetent mediators. And I explain what a good mediation might look like. So yes, if you were to read the book and read between the lines, you could see the techniques that I talk about. But it's not a how-to book on how to prepare yourself for conflict or how to de-escalate yourself once you get into it. It's a book that really looks at international conflict mediation, looks at the causes of international conflict, and asks questions like, how do we mediate with evil? How do we mediate against violence? What do we do with genocide? What are some of the things that we could be doing that we're not doing because we have incompetent people in charge? So that's what the book is really all about.
Okay,
and
but if you read
also point out that the United States is not a country of peace, it's a country of war. And, peacemaking is illegal in the United States. It was made illegal by the Patriot Act, which most people are completely unaware of. If I were to go over to Israel right now and make peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, in all likelihood I violated the Patriot Act, and I would go to federal prison for 25 years.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that at all, but what you're saying is that we're not only hardwired personally to do conflict, but we're hardwired as a country. And I read statistics somewhere, Doug, that the United States has been in some type of form of war continuously since, I'm not even sure, 1950 or something, some phenomenal time period. But I don't want to get into that right now. So reading between the lines, people can pick up strategies. Is that correct?
Right. And I mean, there are plenty of resources where people can learn how to respond to conflict in appropriate ways. I mean, the information that I talk about and teach, although I'm probably a little more nuanced in this because I am a professional mediator, but the basic information is out there on the web. People can find it. The problem is having the discipline and the patience and the compassion for yourself and the forgiveness for yourself to make mistakes and to practice this stuff and reprogram yourself. And that takes time. And it's not easy work, but it is possible. Most of the time people come to me because they haven't done that work. And so they're deeply entrenched in conflict. And they need somebody like myself to help them work through a conversation and make decisions in the face of great uncertainty, ambiguity, and risk where there's high emotions. And so my job is to help walk people through that decision-making process so that they can extract themselves from the conflict. But if you have to do it yourself, you've got to put some time and effort into practicing.
Okay, two points I want to cover. First of all, what do you do now? I know you do talks and seminars and do some teaching. You said you're a professor of law. So you teach law, basic law, but you also teach attorneys, do you not, how to mediate?
I do. I teach advanced mediation. I also am teaching younger lawyers how to become effective legal negotiators. Legal negotiation is not like buying a used car. It's a completely different arcane process that you need to be trained in. Most people don't know, and most lawyers don't know, that lawyers are horrible decision makers. 50% of the time, plaintiffs' lawyers, lawyers who represent people who have filed a lawsuit, are wrong in their decision to go to trial. And the amount of the decisional error amount is $75,000. But on the defense side, while they're only wrong 30% of the time, the magnitude of their error is on average $1.4 million. Lawyers are lousy decision makers. And so what I'm trying to do is train lawyers, how to be better decision makers. Some amazing empirical research out there that's been done that shows people that we think are highly educated are really very, very poor when it comes to making decisions around risk. And they can be trained out of that. So I do that. I mediate. I also, one of my pro bono projects for which I was honored as California Lawyer of the Year last year was teaching murderers in the largest, most violent prison, women's prison in the world, to be peacemakers. I've been working for the last 3 years with my colleague Laurel Copper, and we have trained over 200 life inmates to be peacemakers, and they have absolutely reduced violence in the prisons. Unbelievable.
Well, that's great news.
Incredible.
Doug, why is it difficult to resolve conflicts? Why is it so difficult for people?
Primarily because of emotion. Once we become emotionally activated, our prefrontal cortex shuts down, and it becomes very difficult to make what we call rational decisions. Conflict is all about emotions, and emotions are all about arousing us to our environment to take action because at some level, we perceive danger. And so when people get enmeshed in conflict, it's because there's high emotion, and people don't have the tools and don't have the experience to get themselves out of it, to work out of it. And so that's why we have it. And around the world where we see violence, where we see, for example, terrorists resorting to violence, is because they don't know any other way. They have not learned any other way. They don't believe there's any other effective way. It's an extremely primitive form of conflict resolution. And so part of what we have to do, I think, is teach people skills that allow them to de-escalate themselves. And it's a learned process. We don't teach kids. Kids aren't born terrorists. They're not born criminals. They're taught these behaviors. And we can teach them to be peacemakers.
Well, Doug, that's very interesting what you say, because I have to agree with you that many people just don't know better. They don't know better. They don't know how to solve this other than, hey, let's get in your face, or is that what you said to me? Oh, well, guess what I'm doing to you. And that could be okay between two people. But you mentioned earlier in the program, Doug, that you know of certain diplomats, world diplomats, that have made huge mistakes in their negotiation processes, and that can mean lives, or does mean lives. It could mean millions of dollars. It could mean starvation. How in the world, Doug? First of all, so what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, personally, I don't like to throw in a lot of my opinion, but what Doug said is that they do not know better, and Doug is about, from what Doug's telling us, is about how to teach people the ways, or a way to handle conflict different from the ways that don't seem to work, that cause black eyes and pain and crying. So that's an interesting point. But Doug, give me an example or two about modern diplomatic big, huge mistakes that you touched upon a few minutes ago.
Well, people may remember the genocide that occurred in Rwanda. It's very interesting that the neighboring country, Burundi, had no genocide. The makeup of the population was exactly the same as in Rwanda. The United States could have stopped that genocide. It could have stopped it dead in its tracks. But the Clinton administration was absolutely decided not to intervene until it was well too late. In fact, the United States is under a mandate to stop genocide. There's actually laws, federal law, that requires the U.S. to intervene if there's the possibility of genocide. So the State Department and the national security apparatus did everything they could to not describe what was going on in Rwanda as a genocide. That's a pretty classic example. Another example is Kenya. Kenya's been in the news in the last couple of weeks because of its recent presidential election that, thank God, did not result in the same kind of violence that we saw in 2007. But after the elections of 2007, Kofi Annan was tasked to go into Kenya and try to mediate the dispute to try to end the election crisis. He completely blew it, and he set up Kenya for a huge series of continued to this day. And we can go case after case after case. The United Nations has a track record of success in mediation of about 8%. My success rate as a commercial mediator is about 95%.
All right, Doug, fantastic. But give me an example. You said he blew it. We blew it in Africa. The last example you used, how did he blow it? I mean, how do you know he blew it? I mean,
so we have the benefit of having a lot of people who have studied this. We have transcripts of what transpired. We actually even have Kofi Annan talking about what he did in written transcripts. What he did not do is bring the two presidential contenders into a process where they could sit down and work out personal conflicts that existed between them for their entire lives. And actually, their fathers had been in conflict for all this time, and they were using the political situation in Kenya to further their own conflict. He had an opportunity to get these guys into a room and start working with them towards a more integrated, peaceful Kenya. He didn't have the skill set to do it, and so what he did was allow them to separate, which is the worst thing you can do in an intense conflict. If you want to build trust between people, you have to get them into the same room, even though that's the last place they'd rather be. Most people would rather take up an AK-47 and shoot their enemy than sit down in the same room and be with them. But if you want to make peace, that's what you have to do, because as soon as people start to come together, their oxytocin levels go up. Oxytocin is a hormone that relates to trust. High oxytocin levels mean high trust. Low oxytocin levels mean low trust. The only way Kofi Annan did, and it created a huge problem for Kenya.
Now, that was a great example. That was just an outstanding example on how it happened. But you know what gets me, Doug, is how in the world can the head of the United Nations be such a ding-dong? How do you like that word? Ridiculous word. But how can somebody drop a ball that is in that position? Give me the answer to that, Doug.
One word: arrogance. Diplomats think they know it all. They think they're the smartest. They think they're the best, and they don't think they have anything more to learn. And they're not willing to go outside their own very narrow view of the world to look at the science that has been developed in the last 25 years around how the brain processes peace and conflict. And they are not willing to learn the skills of mediation. A colleague of mine attended a climate change conference 4 years ago and was confronted with diplomats who said, "We don't do mediation. We don't believe in it. We don't think it works." And of course, he was totally ignorant. He had no idea what mediation was. And that climate conference completely collapsed due to the fact that the attendees had absolutely no skills for negotiating with each other, no skills for dealing with the inevitable personal conflicts that arise in such intractable situations. And that is the nature of diplomacy: a high level of arrogance coupled with a lack of desire to learn more.
You know, Doug, you worded that great, and I wish we had more time. We only have about a minute or so because we just started touching on the nitty-gritty here. I think you're getting into the specifics, and that was well explained about high-level diplomats. And it's scary, Doug, that arrogance can cause death, and I believe that to be true, and I believe that's been going on since the dawn of time. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Noll's book is called Elusive Peace: How Modern Diplomatic Strategies Could Better Resolve World Conflicts. For me, he's touched on areas that have to be explored. I think he's on the right path. He really sounds to me, again, I've mentioned a couple of opinions here, but I really have to. He's touched on things that I don't hear often. And if you want to get to know Doug a little bit more, possibly pick up his book, go to elusivepeace.com. elusivepeace.com. Doug, we've had a little difficulty with Skype, kind of a delayed reaction. It's how it works, a Murphy's Law sometimes. But I enjoyed my conversation with you. Thank you very much. And I hope to talk to you again, Doug. Until next time, my friend, okay?
Thank you, Steve. Take care.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a hard break, a couple minutes longer than usual. We're going to put our house into order, do some commercial kind of stuff, and when we come back, we're going to further the discussion on this realm. But we're going to talk about some blood and death and conflict in the Middle East and how to make things work there. Very interesting topic coming up. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Keith Zalley from the WTOE Radio Network, and right now we're going to take a few extra minute break just so we can save our files for our podcast. So please don't go anywhere because there's going to be more Steve and the KOVACS Perspective in just a few minutes.
Nothing inspires imagination like reading, and it's never too early to start reading to your children. When you open a book, you can explore new worlds like the ones in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Everything you see is Narnia.
Impossible. You can make new friends, discover amazing adventures, and most of all, have fun.
Are you prepared for what awaits you?
To find out more about the wonders of reading, you can visit the Library of Congress website at www.loc.gov. There, you can learn more about books, play fun games, discover cool facts, and so much more. You can log on to www.loc.gov and let your journey begin. This message has been brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
They're going to jump out of trees. They'll go down the slide head first. They'll make parachutes out of sheets. They'll balance on things that are impossible to balance on, like the back of a couch. They'll run with sharp objects. They'll climb things that won't hold their weight. They'll put their fingers in places where they could get smashed. They'll drive their tricycles down steep hills. They'll bounce balls off their faces. They'll step on each other. They'll jump on each other. They'll invent whole new ways to put themselves in jeopardy. But one of the most dangerous things kids will do happens while they're sitting perfectly still. Kids who ride in a car without a booster seat are much more likely to suffer serious or fatal injury during a crash than kids in boosters. But amazingly, 80% of all kids who need them aren't in them. After a toddler seat and until they're 4'9" booster kids, and don't let them down.
Go to boosterseat.gov to learn more about the importance of boosters. A message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Mrs. Johnson. Is Megan there?
Sure. Follow me. The kids are in the kitchen making sandwiches.
Hey, Julie. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Megan. Hey, Megan.
Yeah?
You're a total freak. God, you're ugly. And dumb. Oh, and your makeup makes you look like a tramp. Oh, my God. Tommy Morris told me you guys made out. Everybody knows. The whole school knows. He said your breath smelled like garbage, and he almost puked. He says you're the most desperate girl he knows. And that dress is totally hideous. You look like a big fat clown. Disgusting. Oh, and by the way, nice zit.
If you wouldn't say it in person, why say it online? Delete cyberbullying. Don't write it, don't forward it. For more information, visit ncpc.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, Crime Prevention Coalition of America, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
You put your keys between your knuckles. You walk in well-lit areas. Someone approaches you and you grasp your cell phone tightly, ready at any second to dial the number for help. You lock the door behind you, once, twice, maybe 3 times. Now you feel safe, secure. You think you've made the right choices to protect yourself. Think again. Because if you're not making healthy choices, you could be one of the nearly 2 out of 3 women killed by cancer, diabetes, heart disease, or stroke. So eat right, get active, don't smoke, see your doctor, and live. Learn to protect yourself from yourself at 1-866-399-6789 or visit us at everydaychoices.org. A message from the American Cancer Society, American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, and the Ad Council.
And now back to the KOVACS Perspective.
Welcome back, everybody. Steve KOVACS back with you. You know, we have two attorneys on today. That's kind of unique. We're getting smart. We're getting really intelligent. We're going to be learning a lot of stuff, right? We've got two attorneys on. But you know what's interesting is both attorneys are going to be talking, or our second guest will also be talking about how to make things really work, not the status quo that has not worked. Our next guest is the author of Love and Terror in the Middle East. It's the third edition. And over the past 5 years, he's a peace activist and an international attorney. And he's had to face hostility and pass through a maze of walls and checkpoints in Israel and the West Bank to lead interfaith activities aimed at easing that particular region's extremely bloody path to peace. Now, efforts to bring interfaith peace to that region have not come without a high cost and great sacrifices, namely the recent murder of two peace activists, friends of our next guest. Please help me welcome Dr. Frank Romano. How are you, Doctor?
Thank you. Morning,
Doctor.
Thank you, Steve.
It's nice to have you here. And I did a little research, and I watched an interview you did, and your passion in life, is it not, is to find peace in the Middle East between Jews, Muslims, Christians, and you just name it, everybody. Am I correct on that?
Well, it's turned into my passion. My initial passion was to litigate as a lawyer in California and in France for victims, as having experienced what it's like to be a victim when I was younger, and it sort of expanded out into working in the Middle East, and it came through a dream. So one of the themes of the book that you announced, one of the themes is when you have a dream or a vision, how do you find out whether there's some truth to it? I've tried to carry it out, and since I've been going back and forth into Israel and the West Bank from Paris and the U.S., I've found that initial vision, there's something truth to it. There's some truth to it because, the challenges of bringing people together, great, but the vision I had was I would actually do something to bring about peace through grassroots efforts, and I actually see progress. And I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. I feel and I see progress being made.
Okay, Frank, what you're doing is you just said it. You're using grassroots efforts. Let me ask you. Let's get right to the chase. You know, we only have about 25 minutes, and I want to get as much solving as we can do tonight here in our interview, in our conversation. Why is it not working there? Why is the status quo just simply not working? And it is not working as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I totally agree with you, Steve. And one of my pet peeves a little bit is that our politicians, Indian politicians, are not doing their job. There are too many agendas, too much money, power, and greed, taking over and giving way to interest as opposed to really trying to work it out with the people. Because, years ago, the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, there was free circulation between the West Bank and Israel, and they were getting along okay. There were conflicts. The deal is I'm facilitating the dialogues and the marches in Israel and the West Bank. I'm a facilitator. They're going to work it out. I'm just facilitating that because I really honestly, sincerely feel that this place, the Holy Land, is our place too. It's not just me going out there and doing charity work. We're all connected there. It's not far from Mesopotamia, the cradle of humanity, and the Holy Land has a lot to do with all of us. And what I found, Steve, is, and as I'm sort of in the field person. I know about the politics and the religions and the history, but I'm really in the field the person. And what I really feel is, if it's the epicenter there for world peace and conflict. If we don't find a durable peace there, the world, I believe, will remain at war.
Well, Frank, that's very interesting, what you say there. And it's a little bit scary to me, Frank, because it seems such a daunting task to bring peace to that. But yet, and I know Israelis, I know Palestinians, and they're nice people, both of them, and why can't we? What gets me is why can't we touch the hearts of people to get this going, to get a peace going? And that's what you're just telling me, that's exactly what you're doing. You're working piece by piece, person by person, grassroots, and hoping that they light a fire under the butts of their leaders. Am I correct?
Well, you're alluding to something, Steve, that it leads me to believe that you've done some soul searching about it. It's not, you don't just have a peripheral view of it. It is true. It is really about heart to heart. It's about having compassion for each other, connecting, feeling for each other. How do you do that? Well, you bring them together first. I'll just give you a quick example of a dialogue. We'll sit around and just eat hummus and drink mint tea, and no politics, no ideology. And then after a while, I'll ask the Jew, I said, what do you think of your Muslim neighbor there? He said, well, this guy's a cool guy. I've never spent this much time, and I've never been this really close so close to a Muslim, and there's a Christian there too. They're cool people, and but I think they're going along the wrong path. I said, well, what do you mean? Well, they don't believe in Moses the way I do, and the Christian doesn't like it because I don't believe Jesus is my savior. And the Muslim then will pipe up and say, well, they don't really believe in Muhammad, the prophet. And I said, well, I know who's true, what's right, what's wrong. Let's just take out the Quran, let's take out the Torah and the New Testament, and we'll sit down and just check it out. And after an hour or two, and we'll bring in music, maybe we'll bring in a belly dancer to distract the people or something, and then we'll get down to what's common. And not ignoring the differences, and they are baffled to see it. I mean, we've all heard about it. They're very common. But when you see it in the texts themselves, then it brings home the point how similar they are, again, without avoiding the differences. And then I'll ask the Muslim, I say, well, do you think it's possible you might even share the same God here? And at this point, maybe a couple hours ago, they say, absolutely not. We have our God, they have theirs. And our God's a superior God and all that, us against them thing. And then the Muslim will say, but it's possible. And then I'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll leave you all with the final question, but I'll be back. This is an ongoing dialogue. I'll be back with you and other people. Does it make sense to kill in the name of God if you share the same God? And we'll be back, and it's an ongoing dialogue. I see progress. But Steve, I'm planting seeds. It's just like you said, one person at a time. And, I'm planting seeds in fertile ground. I don't really believe that I'm going to see incredible changes in my lifetime. Hopefully for our children and our grandchildren, we'll see a big difference there. But I think the key is grassroots efforts, and I see it happening. I feel it. I feel positive about this, Steve.
Well, Frank, you sound like a good man. And I don't mean that to make you pat you on the back. It's just, you look like you know that it can be done, but it's not going to happen overnight, more than likely. And I like something else you said, and it has to be said in that area, that you kept saying all the time, not discounting their beliefs. I mean, it's okay for me to believe a little bit differently from you, Frank, and we can still get along and work next to each other or in the same bakery, as an example, and yet even have different gods, I think, if we approach it correctly. Is it not?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it's true at the end of the day, not making a big deal about whether they share the same God. It's true if they have, different gods, but they really have a connection. What brings it home is there'll be a Christian sitting next to a Muslim and a Jew next to the Muslim, and it turns out that the Jew and the Muslim have children that go to the same school. They don't communicate to each other. It's about let's just imagine we're around the kitchen table at home and people aren't talking, and they're not communicating, even though you're close to each other. And what happens when you're around the kitchen table? The pressure goes up, and then someone explodes. Well, that's sort of what happens when you don't communicate. Well, they find out, well, gee, we've got kids that go to the same school and yet a different village, because we live in separate villages. And they start talking about, well, the price of lunch has gone up. And what do you think of that teacher? Kind of conservative. And that what breaks, it's everyday things. And when they get together and realize they're just same people, but through this communication, and have similar needs, and they have parallel histories, then we start talking about ideology and religion after that, breaking the ice. But you know what, Steve? A lot of people, a lot of what they call peaceniks, and I work with them, they think that these dialogues are the end. Even the marches and stuff and the demonstrations are the end. Well, no, it's just the beginning. This is all about networking, because what really bonds the people, it's just like any people from any parts of the world, is when we do projects together. Like, we'll go in and replant olive trees that were uprooted for the walls. We'll go in and, like we did with an NGO in Bethlehem, we're working with Muslims, Jews, and Christians to rebuild a school in Bethlehem, an international school for people of all religions, and not a religious school, not a madrasa, yeshiva, or parochial school, an international school, and a school that was destroyed during the Intifada. That was that huge conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And it's when we do projects, that's when the real bonding takes place. The talking is great, the blah blah, but when you just stay with the blah blah, and there's no follow-up, working together, making it better, rebuilding things that were destroyed, then the bonding is not complete, and it doesn't become a durable bonding. Just like the peace, I'm working on a durable peace, not just go in and have a feel-good group. We feel good. We're drinking, you love me, and then we just go home and say, well, we've done our thing. We've done our interfaith thing. Now what's next? It's an ongoing thing. And it really does. The bonding does accentuate when we do projects. We sweat together without many words. We sweat and work together, and then the real bonding. And then we start inviting each other to each other's homes. Hey, that guy, that lady's incredible. We're working together.
Frank, what I really liked what you said is that you work with peaceniks, and it's kind of funny because we're probably in a similar age thing, and I can relate more to that maybe than some of the younger listeners. And they think that this is it, man. This is this walk we're having is really the end, and it isn't. And that's what tells me you're the real deal, Frank. Is that you just said it's the beginning. And that makes sense to me, Frank. It makes sense that it's the beginning. You're networking. I hate that word, but I just had a friend, a good teacher, talk to me about networking. And to get away from the old connotation of what networking meant to me, it means people. It means relationships with people. And that will do it. Now, I've got a question. Now, you're a professor at the University of Paris. Is the thinking in Paris different regarding peace in the Middle East than in the United States, and the general consensus regarding peace in the Middle East? Are there different schools of thought, or the people in France similar to the people in the United States regarding this topic?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for defining that networking, and I didn't really do that. It's absolutely right. It's people to people. It's about people. And fundamentally, the concept of peace is similar. That's such a broad topic. When we get to specifics, though, this is sort of, and on the intellectual level, there's a lot of articles out there. And the French typically normally don't take a knee-jerk approach to things like Muslims, and even though they have probably percentage-wise probably far more Muslims and far more of a diversity. If you look at the percentages. The Jews, Muslims, and Christians in France and in the U.S., other than the big cities in the U.S. You have articles, they talk a lot about it, and they have dialogues here in Paris and outside Paris. But the French typically, and they do projects. I met a French group, they called the Artisans of Peace. Artisans de la paix in French, peace artisans. That I met in Jerusalem, so they actually do the walk. They don't just do the talk. But most of my experience is, and it's not a criticism, it's just the way the education goes here. It stays on the intellectual level. Americans, well, if they're not the ones connected with the knee-jerk approach, and unfortunately, We tend to be manipulated by the press, but so is the same in France. And we take a real knee-jerk approach. You know how it was after 9/11 and the issues with Muslims. And then finally the information starts getting out. And it's still hard to get non-filtered information as to what really is happening. We get beyond that. Americans, they tend to take another step. And you see Americans getting involved. Lots of American groups going back and forth. Of course, some of course, are very, very much pro-Israel, which is, I'm definitely in favor of the state of Israel, but, not blindly pro anyone. We need to take a step back sometimes, and that gets into politics. But Americans, the view is not just to talk about it, to actually do things. And Americans are talkers, but they're some more doers, which I think is really good. And have more tendency of shoveling out money. Not just for sectarian groups specific to further a specific religious cause, but to help people. And so there's a basic difference there. Intellectually very similar, that's to say with respect to the idea of peace, but taking it to the walk, Americans have more of a tendency of taking it, doing the walk, walking the talk, which is sort of what I try to do. And so I appreciate that. I see Americans going back and forth more, in particular more than Europeans, because we have that in our education. Talking but then doing, that's important. Sure. Just, walking the talk.
Sure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're with Dr. Frank Romano. He's an attorney. He's a tenured professor at the University of Paris. He's an international attorney. He deals in that regard also. You can get more information about Frank if you go to frankromano-it.com.
That's
Frank
LT,
Romano.
sorry, -LT.com.
Was it LT?
Yes, it should be LT.
Okay.
It's
all
ambiguous.
Right.
It's unfortunately frankromano-small-l-t.com.
Okay, thank you. And he is the author of
No
Love
problem.
and Terror in the Middle East. It's a third edition. Now, Frank, we've got about 5 minutes, and I want to pick your brain a lot. Now, you are dealing with Christians, Jews, Muslims, and probably one or two that I've forgotten. You're probably not making everybody happy all of the time, and you don't even have to answer that. I believe the answer is yes, but, I mean, you're there at peril to yourself and your friends, and didn't one or two of your friends recently get killed out there?
Well, the love part and the love and terror in the Middle East is all the great people I've met. And like you say, let's get beyond the word networking. We're just great people to people taking their time and efforts to doing the right thing, which I wish our politicians would focus more on, being real leaders instead of just politicking and lining their own pockets and so forth. But it's the terror part of the book is I've lost a very close friend. He's actually an Israeli Jew, a very famous actor, who went with his mother into a Palestinian refugee camp, one of the most contested refugee camps in Palestine, called Janie, from which most of the suicide bombers came from during the Intifada, to establish, he and his mother established what they called a freedom theater, to give the Palestinians something else to do, more constructive things to do than strapping on bombs and going into Israel and blowing up people, and trying to build a bridge between Palestine and Israel. And he inspired me in the very beginning, and all through my work there. Was murdered a year ago. And my friends asked me, advice, maybe I should just stay away for a while. Israeli Jew, back in the refugee camp. I actually slept in the Freedom Theater. It was one of the fallout things. Accused because of going back and forth, of having a death wish, even being this danger man and so on. But and my answer to that is I'm just doing what I think the right thing to do is And you've got to take some chances, some necessary risk. You've got to pay the ultimate price. And I lost another very close friend in Jerusalem who was also murdered, and had nothing to do with related to his peace work. He was just simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. So it is an unstable area sometimes. But you know what, Steve? You got to do what you got to do, and you know, and sometimes risks come with it, and you just have to deal with it.
Well, Frank, you say that, and a lot of people won't do it, and I don't know if I'd have the guts to do what you do. I mean, you're in a you know, in some of your promo or bio material says you're in kind of a tough area. No, you're in a terrible, dangerous area. So it's great that you're doing it. We've got maybe 2 minutes left, Frank, and again, I want to mention your book, Love and Terror in the Middle East, by Dr. Frank Romano. But before I let you go and before you leave us, tell me and tell the people listening on what average people in the United States can do, if there's anything that the average folk can do to facilitate peace in that area. Is there anything we can do? Yes. In fact, I'm glad you asked the question, because most people, you know, have it in their hearts to do something, you know, in their own communities. But it's, you know what, the interface starts at home. That's another theme of the book. Is, you know, you've been at work sometimes, even in your own family where you have people of different cultures, different religions. How do you get them together? You have the same issues. I mean, what happens in our own communities, in our families, a microcosm, what happens in the Middle East or in other global areas where there's conflict. Well, at the end of the book, Love and Terror in the Middle East, I've got a short chapter about what we can do at home. And I do interfaith when I come home to the United States, and do some in France. Where, what do? You set up groups. You like during Hanukkah, Jews can invite Muslims to come. They don't have to pray with them, but they can experience that holiday. And Arabs, Muslims that are breaking the feast during Ramadan can invite Jews and Christians to experience that. And Christians during Christmas can invite Jews to experience that with them. That's one way to do it. And then have meetings and get together. And there's lots of things we can do in our own little communities, because it starts at home, Steve. It really does. Well, Frank, you couldn't have ended this conversation any better than what you just said, because that gives us a cornerstone of what we might be able to do. It starts at home, is what you said. Frank, I consider you a friend now, and if I ever go to Paris and you happen to be hanging your hat there, I'm going to look you up, and you got to take me somewhere to get some escargot. I haven't had it in about 10 years. I used to love it. So you might see me at your door, my friend. Thank you very much for being a guest. It was a privilege, and I hope to talk to you again. I hope so. Thank you, Steve. Take care now. My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great conversation with two attorneys. And who would have thunk it? Many people say, what, attorneys, two of them on the same show? Are you crazy? But we did. We talked about how things can be done reasonably, I think, what it boils down to. If you enjoyed the show, give it to somebody that maybe needs a little reasonableness in their lives. Tell them to check it out at the KOVACS Perspective.com when it becomes a podcast in a couple of days. A lot of interesting, useful information gathered today, I think. It was great to have you here. In 2 weeks, don't be shy. Be back. Second and fourth Monday of every month. Second and fourth Wednesday of every month at the KOVACS Perspective.com. We have a ball. Love having you. Great. Until next time, so long.
KOVACS Perspective is brought to you by the WTOE Radio Network at throughoureyes.org. All WTOE shows are available as a podcast. Visit our podcast page to learn more. The KOVACS Perspective was written by Steve KOVACS, directed by Tom Bendenwald Jr., technical director and audio engineer Len Azzarone, assistant audio engineer Lori Viscuso. For more information about the KOVACS Perspective, visit www.allsourcesecurity.com. All words, ideas, and comments expressed on the KOVACS Perspective are those of Steve KOVACS and not necessarily those of the National Federation of the Blind, the NFB Northeast New Jersey Chapter, or the WTOE Radio Network. Until next time, I'm Keith Zally.
Done it again.
That's all, folks.